Who these people are or were?
Carlos.
Who?
John Carlos.
Which one?
The one in the back.
And who was the one in front?
I just read it.
Okay. All right. 1968. Pay attention. 1968. Everybody knows that year. That was the year that Martin Luther King was assassinated. That was the year Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. A lot of protests going on. A lot of upheaval in the country. That sort of thing. It also happened in sports. That was the year of the Olympic Games in Mexico City. 1968, October. And African-American athletes led by a guy named Harry Edwards, who went to school here. Dr. Harry Edwards, who's a sociologist. You've probably seen him before, you just didn't know it was him, and I'll tell you where you may have seen him. Decided that black athletes should boycott the Olympic Games. We can't have our rights. We shouldn't be able to go over and represent the United States and win gold medals. Was his idea. Some athletes were for it, some were against it. Lou Alcindor decided not to go to the Olympics that year. Everybody know who Lou Alcindor is? Who? Yeah, okay. Elvin Hayes decided not to go. Two of the best players in college at the time decided not to go. Anyway, African-American athletes did go. And two of them were these two guys who went to school here at San Jose State. San Jose State had such a good track team that they called it Speed City. They had these two guys. They had Lee Evans, who set the world record at 400 meters at the same time. You may have seen the banner hanging up there for NCAA champions. These guys were the reason why. They went to the Olympic Games. In the 200 meters, Tommie Smith set the world record, 1908 or something like that. Peter Norman from Australia finished second, and John Carlos finished third. They decided that they were going to do a protest. And what they decided that they would do would be a silent protest on the victory stand, which was a total no-no to the International Olympic Committee. No politics in sports. You gotta understand, this was something really terrible that they were doing. They came home and couldn't find jobs. They were ostracized. Their families had death threats and the whole works. Because during the national anthem, they stood with their heads bowed, fists raised, and what was called a Black Power salute at that time. But they said that it was a human rights salute. Took their shoes off, wore black socks to symbolize poverty in America. And John Carlos told me, I didn't know this part, but he wore those beads around his neck to symbolize African Americans who had been lynched, and nothing had ever been done about it. Tommie Smith was on my radio show earlier in the year, radio show which one of you will be on Friday. You don't know which one it's going to be yet. I'll tell you later. And what they did was, you got to understand, it was really courageous what they did, because they knew that their lives would never be the same. That they weren't going to be able to find jobs, they weren't going to be able to do anything, and they were ostracized. Now, what this did and how it helped is that just as you hear people talking about, and this will work for you, college athletes should be paid, well, people who were world-class athletes like them got nothing for setting world records at that time. Nowadays, these guys can make a little money, like a Carl Lewis or that sort of thing. And they got nothing. And it wasn't just about money for them, but it was just about human dignity all over the world. And that's what they did. And that's who they are. And they were students here at that time. And no one had ever done anything for them here at the school until somebody decided something needed to be done. And thus you have this statue here. Questions? Comments?
You said you'd tell us where we've seen that guy before. Sociology.
Sideline of San Francisco 49ers game. You see this big 6'8" black guy with a bald head. He worked for the 49ers later on, helping players get their lives in order. And if you ever watch any NFL, you'll see it. He's hard to miss. He's bigger than most of the players. And he's professor of sociology. He was a sociology guy over at Berkeley. Professor Emeritus. As somebody asked about the silver medal winner, it's a guy named Peter Norman. He was from Australia. And for those of you who don't know, Australia was pretty much in a lot of ways like South Africa as far as apartheid was concerned at that time. And he saw that they were going to do something before they went out. And he said, well, I want to do something too. So they gave him this little button with this organization that Dr. Edwards started called the Olympic Organizing something or whatever. I don't remember the name of it. So he wore that and he sympathized with him, and he was one of the best 200-meter men in the world 4 years later. Made the team, but they didn't let him go because he stood up there with them.
So why didn't they put him right there? So why didn't they put him right there?
Why didn't they? I don't know. You got to ask the person that did this. But there's an inscription right there about it. When you walk up closer and see it. As a matter of fact, he died about 3 years ago, and Tommie Smith told me that they were pallbearers at his funeral in Australia. They went on with Australia for his funeral. He died of cancer. But that's the story behind this, and it's if you were around during that time, if you were old like me, and I was in high school then, so this was a big deal. And it was a big deal from a matter of pride, and it was a big deal because you finally saw athletes during that time, who a number of them did, stood up and took stands beyond athletics. And that's why these guys that's why they got a statue of them here in school.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Any questions?
Thank you.